Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I'm Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, we're going to get to talk about a state that we don't get to talk about very often around here because they do a fantastic job of letting their citizens live like Americans. And so really, there's about a dozen states that we end up really spending a lot of time talking about. But occasionally, one of these other states will do something so totally awesome that we've got to do a video. One, to make many of us jealous around the country, but also to give them an attaboy, and that's what we're going to do today. So today, let's spend a few minutes and let's talk about the state that just made defending property a lot easier. Okay, America, we are going to talk about a piece of legislation that really upped the ante as far as how a person can defend property. We're going to talk today about the state of Oklahoma and Oklahoma Enrolled House Bill number 2818. Now, Oklahoma probably already knows this, but the rest of you will begin to learn right now. This bill was signed into law by the governor, Governor Stitt, on May 15th and had an emergency enactment clause. Now, here's what the bill does in a nutshell, and then we'll actually give you the true language out of the legislation. In Oklahoma, prior to the enactment of this law, really about the only time that you could point a firearm at another person was in an act of lawful self-defense. Makes sense. But that had to be self-defense of yourself or another person, you see. What this bill does now is say that, in some instances, you can do the same thing to defend property. In fact, technically, what the bill does, it amends Oklahoma Statute Section 1289.16, which is your felony pointing of a firearm statute. Now, the statute used to read like this. But what the legislation has done is basically struck almost all of it right here, as you can see, leaving the following. It shall be lawful to point a firearm or any other deadly weapon at another person or persons by, 1, a person who can legally own or possess a weapon pursuant to the provisions of Section 1272 of this title, A, during an act of self-defense, or B, in defense of real or private property, whether owned, leased, or occupied by permission of the property owner, and whether or not the person possesses a valid handgun license issued pursuant to the Oklahoma Self-Defense Act. 2, a person in the defensive display of a firearm or other deadly weapon is provided for in Section 1289.125 of this title. As a matter of fact, the law goes on to further define the lawful activity as the defensive display of a firearm or other deadly weapon by a person is justified when and to the extent a reasonable person believes that physical force is immediately necessary to protect himself, herself, or another person against the use or attempted use of unlawful physical or deadly force by a person, premises owner, or controller in self-defense or in defense of real or private property located on any premise owned, rented, leased, or occupied by permission of the premise owner or controller, whether or not a person is in possession of a valid handgun license issued pursuant to the provisions of the Oklahoma Self-Defense Act, and shall not be deemed a criminal act. Now, Oklahoma, I believe you are constitutional carry, but apparently that as long as you are lawfully possessing the firearm, you will be permitted to point that firearm at another person in defense of property. Now, there are a couple exceptions. You don't get to do it if the provisions of this subsection shall not apply to a person who, A, intentionally provokes another person to use or attempt to use unlawful physical or deadly force, or what we like to call the first aggressor standard, which is pretty universal throughout all of the states, and B, uses a firearm during the commission of an unlawful act involving force or violence. Oh, and by the way, when do you get to actually display the firearm in this fashion in defense of property? Well, it appears just about any time, because the statute further states, the provisions of this subsection do not require the defensive display of a firearm or any other deadly weapon before the use of defensive force or the threat of defensive force by a person who is justified in the use or threatened use of defensive force. So listen, what we quite frequently cover here at Washington Gun Law are states that are just systematically eroding away the right to keep and bear arms and the right of self-preservation from its citizens. And it's rare, unfortunately, it is rare that we get to do a video about a state that's moving exactly in the opposite direction, but that's exactly what the state of Oklahoma has done. Because with the passage of Enrolled House Bill 2818 and the signature by the governor, the state of Oklahoma has given its citizens an all-important tool in one of the most important and inalienable human rights imaginable. And it is not just the right of self-defense, it is the right of self-preservation. Listen, if you are a criminal somewhere and you're thinking about going to the state of Oklahoma to commit even property crime, you might want to take a look at Enrolled House Bill 2818. It is a definite FAFO bill. Listen, we're going to go ahead and link it up down below so that you guys can geek out on it for yourself or drool with envy like I did. Kudos to everyone out there in the Oklahoma State Legislature for getting this done. If you guys got any questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights, you guys should know how to get a hold of Washington gun law by now. But if you don't, that's okay. That information's down there in the description box. If you got an idea for a video we should be doing around here, cool. Just click on that link right there and tell us all about it. If you want to subscribe to the monthly newsletter, the ability to do that is down there in the description box. And then finally, and most importantly, let's everyone remember that part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation and how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching and stay safe.